Welcome to the Astrology Star Sisters Talk Over Tea. And my star sister today joining me is Marcia Butchart. And we're talking about the fixed stars, You're a Sky Full of Stars, Part 2. Welcome, Marcia. How are you doing today?
Hi there, Liz. I'm doing not too bad.
Great.
Sun's shining. It's
I know it's a beautiful day out, and we're going to talk about the stars. We can't see them right now in the sky, but
I
give
know,
us a few
darn.
hours, and when it's dark, we'll be able to see them again. And the view has been beautiful
Yes, it
of the
has.
stars. And there goes my phone. Oh,
Jingle,
well,
jingle, jingle.
I'll just have to ignore it.
Yeah.
So we're going to get started. So to get a hold of Marcia, her email is madam@mindspring.com. And my website is alightpath.com. And we both enjoy hearing from you. And I'm going to let you start talking about your Sky Full of Stars, Marcia.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be part of a sky full of stars that is maybe very new to people. As I said in the previous podcast that we did, in episode 1, or the introduction, the main chatter, if you will, about how to use fixed stars in a chart centers around whether it is more accurate to use what I call projected ecliptic degrees that casts the latitude, wherever it is in the sky, matches it up with a degree of the zodiac, or whether you should use the mundane in mundo aspects, also known as parans, to measure their impact on a chart. What we're going to talk about today is something completely different. And I was first introduced to this methodology of working with the fixed stars by Bernadette Brady, who wrote this. I purchased this at UAC back in the
Great
day.
book.
Yeah,
Great book.
Brady's Book of Fixed Stars, and went and listened to her lectures, and then later took the course that she developed in working with the fixed stars. Now, she does work with parans, but the concept today that I want to explore is that of heliacal rising and setting stars. Okay, that'll be the focus for this episode. The other 3 will be coming as part 3, angular stars in a chart, the aforementioned parans, and finally, co-culmination degrees. So these, rather than being sort of Ptolemaic and other Hellenistic development, these have their origins in Egypt. The Egyptians had ways of counting the night sky. They would count every 10 days when a certain star would rise, and it would rise at this hour of night. And 10 days later, they would say, okay, the next one, now this star is rising and the other one is moved up. And you can see in the coffin texts that are in some of the sarcophagi, yes, of the pharaohs and their high officials, you will see these wonderful, star clocks, which show the progression of the stars throughout the night, through different days of the year. So these were critical, sacred, and civic timekeepers. For an example, and many people already know this, the Heliacal Rising of Sirius, the star of Isis, the goddess Isis, marked the ancient Egyptian New Year and heralded, before the Aswan Dam, the flooding of the Nile that would render the fields fertile. So this was a big deal. So in Brady's modern reframe, she thinks that this star pair can significantly impact one's entire life. So what are we talking about here? we're going to linger on this bullet for a while because what we're talking about are stellar seasons. Each latitude, each degree of earthly latitude, give or take maybe 5, within a 5-degree span, each earthly latitude has a specific repeating annual pattern of heliacal rising and setting stars. So what am I talking about here? All right. I'll explain that in a minute, but what is neat about working with your heliacal rising and setting stars, you don't need a birth time to find them. You don't even need the zodiac because they are unaffected by the whole question of whether to use a tropical versus sidereal zodiac because they're not linked to the zodiac. They're linked to the appearance of stars on the horizon. And also importantly, the disappearance of stars on the horizon. Now, the other thing that you will find if you search the web at all, there are 2 astrological authors and scholars who are doing also great amounts of study with the Egyptian star clocks, Austin Coppock and Cameron Cassidy. Many people are familiar with Austin's book on the decans. I think it's called 36 Faces. Cameron Cassidy is a newer scholar on the scene. He teaches out of Kepler College, and he has a wonderful recording. If you can get into the ESAR website, he has a wonderful explanation of how the star clocks show the origin of the decans. Now, both those astrologers are working with identifying the 10-degree chunks of the zodiac that are aligned with various asterisms. So the whole question of the zodiac does into play for them, but not with heliacal rising and setting stars. Okay, we will be horizontal, horizon based, So a heliacal rising star is invisible for the same span of days each year. If it were a planet, it would be said to be under the beams. And then after this period of days, it is suddenly seen to rise in the east just before the sun's light blots it out. This is what is meant by the heliacal rise of the star Sirius, that all of a sudden, after having been absent from the sky for X number of days, there it is, coming up just before the sun. It's sort of like the announcing the arrival of the king. So the significant thing to remember about the stars that can heliacally rise at your latitude is that their celestial latitude is in the opposite hemisphere from where you are. The constellation of, for instance, that contains Sirius, the big dog, Canis Major, okay, that's a southern, sort of latitude constellation. And at the latitude where Liz and I live, around 48 degrees north, okay, the whole constellation of Sirius that contains Sirius is gone for a good chunk of the year. Heliacal setting stars, by contrast, are seen to be up all night for the same span of days each year. They don't disappear. But, you'll come out and you go, oh, there's such and such a star. Let's pick one that never sets. Oh, one of the stars in the Big Dipper, okay, at our latitudes. It's up all night, okay, for the same span of days each year. And then will be seen sometime during the night to touch down and disappear beneath the horizon, again in the west, just before sunrise again. And so their celestial latitude is in the same hemisphere as you at your latitude. Here we are at 48. I was born at around 38, 10 degrees south. Okay. And that makes a difference in what shows up. Okay, Liz, you can. Interpretively, what's the big deal? From a sacred religious standpoint, in Egyptian myth and, you know, later other myths, these were stellar deities who were returning to Earth after an absence, after not touching the horizon, not settling onto Earth or rising up from it. So their return is signaled by their first appearance, on the horizon, either coming up or touching down. So one deity is rising up from the invisible underworld, and one deity is descending from on high to come back. One has been, undergoing the underworld journey, the same as the sun does every single day. And one is coming back from the realm of the immortals, the stars that never set, and touching back down. So each pair, okay, the one emerging and the one descending, co-rule a chunk of time until the next stellar deity rises or descends. They don't do this in lockstep. Okay, for instance, on date one, you would have one star become the Heliacal Rising Star, while perhaps another stellar deity is the Heliacal Setting Star. But then a few days into the new rule of this Heliacal Rising Star, you get a new setting star, a new Heliacal Setting Star. And so there is a very cute little tool in the software program that I use that is available through Zentara, Zintara.com, that is called the Parapegma. It's a star calendar, and you can find at your latitude that you're interested in the sort of schedule at your latitude when a given star is going to be heliacally rising, setting, or whatever. Now, the period of time when these stars are seen to touch the horizon, they can see them rise and you can see them set. They are said to have passage. And so the gods walk among us.
I like that. And I can add that link to the comments below our show. So I'll do that.
Yes, Zentara.com is where you would purchase the program called Starlight, appropriately enough. So, interpretive musings that I've both read and have also, speculated on when I've talked to people about their heliacal rising and setting stars. Okay, that the heliacal rising star has a connection with one's past, whereas the heliacal setting star has more of a connection with what lies ahead. Those of you who are um, evolutionarily minded in your astrological practice and look at the chart as a means of the evolving soul, this is possibly another tool for your toolkit. The evolutionary astrologers of my acquaintance use the lunar nodal axis as a huge factor in their interpretations. But the heliacal rising and setting stars are a very special, they're only linked with your sun, not also with the moon. And the way that they impact the life is to touch the earth, the actual horizon, where you live, where it's all taking place. Okay, Liz. This is a wonderful word. When I showed it to a friend of mine, she said, "What on earth is that?" Any of you who have been in therapy, particularly with Jungian-based psychological counselors, may have heard the term psychopomp. Someone, the psychiatrist or the therapist acts, or any kind of healer acts as the one who goes through the underworld experience with you. In classical literature, you think of the poet Virgil guiding Dante through hell in the Divine Comedy, the Inferno part. He is Dante's guide. he doesn't leave. Okay. And Dante then goes forth to eventually Purgatorio and Paradiso. The Heliacal Setting Star might be more thought of as akin to your guardian angel, someone who, or an energy who can, who you can look up to, that it can, be something like grace that descends from above and says, you know, you can do this. Your psychopomp is there with you, but the guardian angel says, here's the hand. If any of you have seen, and you can Google this online, there's a wonderful painting of Persephone being brought up from the underworld to be reunited with her mother. And she is in the arms of the god Hermes, or the planet Mercury. Mercury had one of his epithets was psychopomp, because he was the only god who went to all three realms. He went to the underworld. He stayed, came, planet side walked among mortals, and also went to Olympus. So therefore, the Heliacal Rising Star has connotations of an inheritance or a talent. I talked last time about Algol and having, saying instead of thinking the star is doing something to me, what if this is a quality, like your secret superpower? It could be dangerous. It could be enormously helpful. It requires, sort of an act of will on your part to learn to use it effectively. Whereas the Heliacal Setting Star is more akin to one's sense of mission or calling. Your inheritance or talent can help you accomplish your mission. Being that it can be somewhat past based, one thinks immediately of family and of origin, especially connections, and the soil in which you grew up and the gifts and inheritance that your family passes on to you. Whereas the teachers and the idols, the gurus, the I want to grow up to be these people are much more in the nature of your heliacal setting star. Thinking of the Greek philosopher Plato, heliacal rising star is really okay, wherever you go, there you are. It has a lot to do with being, whereas the heliacal setting star drags you forward into becoming. If you think about it in terms of the natal chart, the heliacal rising star could be said to be akin to your birth chart. And those of you who work with secondary progressions, this is who you were flowering into. Every one of us knows that if you work with secondary progressions, there will be your sun by secondary progression or solar arc direction will only go through maybe 4 signs in a lifetime. Okay, the becoming part is all of the development that takes place, where you started and where you're aiming for. So in terms of being on a journey, you think of your car, steering gear, the wheel, the handlebars on your bike, um, and you consult your GPS as to how to get to your destination. In terms of people, not just the tools, but the people. If, you know, airplanes, boats. There's the crew who actually does the actual sailing of the ship and the steersman and everything, but the captain and the pilot is using the sextant and setting the direction. And yes, looking at the stars to figure out where you are and how to get where you're going. So, one of the big points Bernadette makes, and I think this is quite lovely, is that the Heliacal Rising Star has to do with themes of resurrection. So you think of the Christian holiday of Easter, when Christ rises again after being killed, whereas the Heliacal Setting Star is much more like birth or incarnation, coming down for the first time, which really kind of speaks of the myth of Christmas, doesn't it? And the birth of the Christ child. And just finally, okay, my you have your inclinations, your inborn tendencies and habits, and then your aspirations, the self you would strive to become. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I'm still trying to decide. No, I'm working at it.
Going to the realm of fiction and film, it can be, you know, highly informative to think of our modern myths that are represented by this star pair. In the whole Lord of the Rings saga, the character of Frodo Baggins, the Hobbit, okay, uh, he receives from his uncle Bilbo the ring that he then must deal with and, eventually seek to destroy in order to set the world right again. The gift that he is given while on his journey by the um, old elven queen, Galadriel, is the phial with the light that will shine in the darkest places. So these can also be guides. One of our other modern myths in the Star Wars saga, in the character of Luke Skywalker. The character of Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course, is a man from Luke's past who knew and trained his father before he had to defeat him, and then, tries to set Luke on the path to becoming a Jedi. And Yoda is the one who then trains Luke so that he can complete his mission of saving the galaxy. So these can be either, sort of material or inborn psychic gifts, or they can be people in your life. These are some thoughts that I've had in the pre-dawn light, which is when the god Apollo sends you your true dreams and your prophetic visions, along with the Heliacal Rising Star. Our sun is a star, and our star creates our seasons of the day and the year. Okay. Our we know, for instance, that fall is coming, autumn is here, there's less light, the day is shorter. As a result, things are starting to cool off, things are slowing down. Um, a couple of months ago, I could wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, no problem. It's like, whoa, there's all this day, and it's summer. Okay. Up here at this latitude, the sun will set at about 4 in the afternoon. And all I want to do is hibernate. Our seasons of the day and the earth are created by our star. And so our suns, stellar kinfolk out there, create our seasons of the night. These are our suns when there is no sun. So the question that I am starting to consider how to think about is, do these kinfolk, near and distant, affect each other within the, confines of our psyche, of our soul, of our journey through life? A lot of people use their sun sign as sort of like a spiritual calling. As a matter of fact, there's a point in the chart that I'm sure everybody knows how to calculate, the lot of spirit, which was called the lot of the sun. And it was said to be about, this was contrasted with the lot of the moon, which was a night, you know, sort of like your physical incarnation, your ordinary health, the happenstances. But the lot of the sun was about your sort of spirit's yearnings and what you set your intentions to do. In the light of day, you run around doing all the stuff that you're, trying to get done. But at night, okay, it's a different story. So I thought that it would be fun to show you Liz and I. Okay. Liz was born in Seattle, Washington, you know, 47 and change north latitude, and her heliacal rising star is one of the stings of the constellation of the Scorpion. I was born, close to 10 degrees south in latitude. My heliacal rising star is the other sting of the Scorpion. The stings of the Scorpion are actually a pair of nebulae, and the nebulas have very iffy reputations amongst interpreters of fixed stars, star pairs. One is usually considered somewhat more positive, according to Bernadette Brady, than the other one. They embody different poles of a single concept. The sting of a scorpion, of course, hurts. But the difference supposedly between the two is that Aculeus can be the sting which is medicinal. Almost every medicine is a poison. Things when you're treating stuff, you are carefully administering very specific amounts of poisons in order to defeat whatever it is that is impacting you. Acumen, unfortunately, is the other side, the scorpion sting that is weakening. And so Liz has an inborn, one might say, capability to be both hurt but be able to grow stronger in the same way that gravity strengthens your bones. Those poor astronauts who are stranded at the space station right now, I can't imagine what kind of, rehab they're going to need once they finally get back. They will have been without this necessary sting, this necessary stressor that, keeps your bones bony. Not all stress is terrible. However, sometimes, I think in terms of my own, if I hold my arm up, it starts to get heavy. Well, my arm weighs a certain amount, but you know what I'm holding up? 14 pounds per square inch. That's how much the air weighs. And that is added to the weight of my arm. And eventually, I'm not going to be able to hold my arm up anymore. And sometimes, yes, there's that line from I think it's Bruce Springsteen or one of the Point Blank. He says, and the line runs, "What they asked, baby, wasn't right." Sometimes, or as Liz Green said, sometimes the spirit asks too much, and it's up to you to say no. This is in her marvelous book that she did with Howard Sasportas called The Inner Planets. So I have had, by contrast, to learn to deal with, all right, I've got a weakness. How do I still accomplish things while not being able to run on all cylinders? And that's a valuable skill, actually, because it allows you to know when to husband your energy, or since I'm a woman, to wife your energy. So this is where we're coming from. But where are we going to? Let's see where Liz is getting strong from, using her medicine of the sting of the scorpion to be able to strive either to use weapons wisely. The bull's horn can be a deadly weapon, as anyone knows. However, the choice of using it and how is akin to the surgeon's scalpel. Liz does energy work that is quite profound. And if any of you have been gifted to, receive some of her energy work. This is this is no inconsiderable. That requires a tremendous amount of discipline and precision. Do you have any comments to make about that, Liz?
Well, and it's part of it's a natural talent, the energy work that I've worked with. Because even as a child, I was doing energy work, but I didn't realize it because I didn't know what to call it. So, but thank you.
Yeah. So my heliacal setting star, by contrast, is a beautiful star Capella in the constellation of the Charioteer. And this is a charioteer who's riding through the sky, horses just, you think of Bruce Springsteen's song Born to Run, and sort of just, whee, going out there and being free, freedom of movement, not out of rebellion, running away from something or fighting against something, but just because I'm going to go do what I want to. I will hoe my own row, and I'll do it the way I want to as well. Not because I'm setting myself to contest with somebody or to prove a point, but just, here's where I want to go. I have to say that I have so far lived my life on my own terms, chosen my own paths quietly. Nobody, when people would notice and point out, this was really an unusual way for you to accomplish fill in the blank. For instance, in corporate America, where I spent 16 years, I came in as a secretary and worked my way up, bootstrapped myself up to be a systems analyst. Okay. Um, and I had no degree in anything, and I had no business training, and I had no uh, experience to speak of. It was all, I did it just for myself. Same thing with my studies in esoterica. Uh, I just decided one day I'm going to study astrology. I know so much I can appreciate Liz's skill at energy healing because I decided at one point, yeah, this is really interesting. I'm going to study this. And I studied a couple of things, Liz, polarity therapy and acupressure.
Yes, very valuable tools.
Yeah. And it's sort of like the way I know when I've succeeded in a reading is if somebody suddenly straightens up like a weight just dropped off their shoulders. I'm not trying to help people over control their lives. I'm trying to help them free themselves up.
That's wonderful. Are you ready for the next slide, or you're still?
Yeah. So here is another fascinating thing that one can do with the Heliacal Rising and Setting Stars. Every year, okay, and there will be, for instance, Cazimis, exact conjunctions of the sun with the different planets. And since this, we're talking about the sun and the heliacal rising and setting points, all right, okay. This one that we just had that I referenced a couple of sessions ago with Liz, the Venus star point that happened in Gemini back in June, okay, at 14 degrees and change of Gemini. So the zodiacal season was the sun was in Gemini. If you use tropical zodiac, it was still in Taurus. If you use the sidereal zodiac, you could analyze this, and we did, going through, the rulership of sign, exaltation, triplicity, bound, and face. What I've wondered about the Venus star point in Gemini is why it seems to coincide historically, because I've been doing a bit more research on it, with so much social unrest, collective angst, and sort of eruptions from the collective. Let's look at the star season of this year's Venus star point. Okay, the stellar season of the 2024 Venus star point. Remember, latitude matters, not time zone. Okay. So I decided to check out some conflict driven areas around the world and settled on just four. Okay, Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv, Israel. The Heliacal Rising Star was Menkar, and the setting star was Arcturus. However, in another latitude, going up, up north a ways, in London, UK, and in Kiev, Ukraine, they had the same Heliacal Rising Star, but a different Heliacal Setting Star. So coming from a common source, but seeking different ends. So you can switch to the next one, Liz. So with different star pairs, you get different effects for different locations. So all those four locations, as I just mentioned, have a common heliacal rising star. Menkar, in the jaw of Cetus, the sea monster. This is as I want to spend a little time on Menkar here, Liz, before we go forward, because as Bernadette Brady says, this is not, the Cetus was called a whale, but it was not your friendly, sort of free willy kind of whale creature. This is more like the creature from the Black Lagoon. And so this implies huge amounts of collective anguish and disorder and disruption. In mythology, Cetus was the sea monster that was sent to savage the coast of Ethiopia in retaliation for Queen Cassiopeia, praising herself above some of the other deities. And so, you know, she and her husband's kingdom was being wrecked along the coastline by this monster that had to be then defeated in myth by Perseus. So yeah, if I in 1964 when the Venus star point began, we still had Menkar as a heliacal rising star at a lot of the Earth's locations, and in particularly in 1968, it was as if everything had broken loose. Liz and I especially, being 10 years older, I'm old enough to remember what 1968 was like. But the different heliacal setting stars. Okay, for Washington, D.C. and Tel Aviv, the heliacal setting star is in the constellation of Bootes. The hunter turned farmer is what uh, Bernadette calls him. But I went searching deeper, and I highly recommend that if you are interested in just researching a star, that you go online and start searching through all the myths, because I discovered some fascinating stuff about Bootes and the constellation and the star Arcturus and the mythology. So there were three, it turns out, myths that I found. It comes from the ancient Greek, but it's not, and it was always a herdsman, but not, nobody knows who it was supposed to be. So in certain stories, okay, the Arcus, Arcturus, Alpha Star, is the son of Zeus and a nymph, Callisto. And to hide his paramour from his jealous wife Hera, Zeus transforms Callisto into a bear. And Arcus grows up to be a famous hunter and didn't recognize his mother, and when he was out hunting bears and attempted to hunt her. And to prevent the crime of matricide, which was one of the most horrible things that could happen in that culture, Zeus placed them in the sky as the constellations. Ursa Major, the Great Bear, was Callisto, and Arcas, with the star Arcturus, as Bootes, to prevent the mistaken killing. However, in another story, Bootes is a grape farmer and winemaker, and was placed in the sky by Dionysus, who is the god of wine, because he really liked this guy's grapes and taught him to make wine. And so, of course, Icarius, that was the name of the uh, huntsman, came and said, "Oh my, okay, um, we've got to uh, have our friends over and have a big old party." And the next morning, when they had their first hangovers, the friends thought that their host had been trying to poison them and they killed him. In yet another story, okay, Arcturus is the legendary sort of like creator of the plow that allows agriculture to be developed. This is why Bernadette, I think, refers to him as the huntsman turned farmer. But I think of the amazing and terrible violence that has been, committed in the Middle East that goes on today. And I think of the wrong motives that Icarius's friends ascribed to his actions once they, this guy was trying to kill us. Well, we're going to, make sure this doesn't happen again. And it's all about this land and who owns this land and who has the right to live in it and who has the right to farm it and to settle it. In our own country, we are not guiltless of this either. We came and took land from the people who were originally here when we settled here. My ancestors have the blood of centuries on their hands. Even if they were not direct perpetrators of that violence. And it was all about the farming. We need the land. We need to grow the food. We need to, our whole society started out in the United States as agrarian. We didn't start out as an industrialized monster country. We started out as a bunch of people pushing plows. By the contrast, the star Diadem in the constellation Bernice's Hare for the UK and the Ukraine. Diadem is the Bernice's Hare is a constellation. It's very faint. It's very dim. It's it's hard to find at night. If you need a really clear sky on a really dark night in order to see it. And the common myth that's associated with it is that Bernice is a queen who cuts off her hair and offers it to the gods as a gift for her husband's safe return from war. So it's, a sacred act of taking something that is a huge symbol of power, one's hair, and offering it up in return for, safety in war. And there's another interesting association one can make with diadem and the constellation Bernice's Hare, because in the sky, that constellation is right above Virgo. And some cultures, ancient cultures, interpreted it as the torch, held aloft in the goddess's hand, or the whisk, or the symbol of power. I have, whisks as symbols of power. You see them in Egyptian iconography. Those things that are held over the shoulders and everything, the whisks, so that this is, some sort of possibly connected to ancient goddess mythologies. And And in the UK, I was suddenly struck by the revelation, okay, not exactly on, but near to the Venus star point of the revelation of Princess Kate's illness. I have always envied Kate, her hair. That's the hair I would love to have been born with, and I just wasn't. Now that she is undergoing treatment for cancer, you know what happens when you take that chemo, don't you? One of the things that I am struck by looking at some of the films from the Ukraine of the ordinary soldiers, they take care of these cats and dogs that hook up with them. And you see these guys with a kitten stuffed under, the flak jacket. You also, in the UK, if you're thinking of whisks and symbols of power, their extensive use of drone warfare, they have raised this to a phenomenal level of skill. These little things that come flying through the air and go, and then gone.
That's amazing.
So yes, you can let your imagination really fly free when you're thinking about all of the possible meanings for you personally or for a collective of these different star pairs, rather than running straight to a, well, say, like the Sabian symbols, which gives a specific degree of meaning to, each degree of the zodiac. Don't go there. Go all over. It's a whole sky out there.
Yes, the sky is broad and beautiful, and it changes almost nightly.
Yeah. In a future episode, what I also thought of in the pre-dawn light, the heliacal star pair might just have a significant underpinning of meaning for an eclipse, because an eclipse is a solar event, okay, involving our star. And okay, at the time of year that it occurs in the different latitudes around the globe, okay, the the star pair might have a subtle influence of some sort on the meaning of the eclipse. Stay tuned. This requires some, you know, interesting investigation.
I look forward to that. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah. As a closing thing, another upcoming day, US election day, and everybody is stressing hugely about that. And what I was struck by was that the Heliacal Rising Star, and it has been since US election day was settled on as the first Tuesday that wasn't a religious holiday in November. Spica, which is a star that it has always been like a shaft of wheat, a gift in the hand of the constellation Virgo being given to humankind, the gift of agriculture, if you will. And the thing that's marvelous about this is I found out with online research that the reason November was chosen was because it was just past harvest time for an agrarian society. Your crops would be in, you could go vote, but winter had not settled in. And so you could probably still get to your county seat to cast your vote. So ever since 1845, when the US election day was first set to that first week in November, it's been Spica as the Heliacal Rising Star. It still is Spica. I had always been wondering, gosh, U.S. election day occurs when the sun is in the sign, the zodiac sign, tropical zodiac sign of Scorpio, and doesn't that imply like lots of conflict? Scorpio has one of the worst reps of any of the signs of the zodiac. Sorry, Scorpios. I think you get a bad rap, frankly. But this beautiful star is the Heliacal Rising Star, a star that when it is said to, when it occurs in a person's chart, Bernadette um, uh, implies that this is someone who desires to use their gifts for the greatest possible good for everyone. However, as the next bullet that um, Liz has kicked up says, the heliacal setting star varies. If election day in this current century occurs between November 2nd and 3rd, the heliacal setting star is Alpheratz, associated with the constellations of both Andromeda and Pegasus, the winged horse. If it occurs on November 4th, the heliacal rising star is Hamal, the alpha star in the constellation, not the zodiac sign, but the constellation of Aries, the ram. And if if election day is on the 5th through the 8th, the heliacal setting star is Meroc, which is solidly in the constellation Andromeda. So let's look at these different setting stars. Bernadette associates Alpheratz with freedom. Oh, want to go back one? Yeah, because I want to spend some time. I did a little bit more research. So Andromeda was the daughter of Cassiopeia and King Cepheus, who was supposedly to be sacrificed to Cetus, that sea monster, but Perseus came along and using the head of the Gorgon, held up the head of the Gorgon, Cetus turned to stone, and Andromeda was saved. So that's sort of the main myth that a lot of people have heard. And Andromeda, therefore, is called, variously the chain princess, the chain woman, and so forth. However, Alpheratz being also in the constellation Pegasus, flying horse. What was the origin of Pegasus? Anybody know?
I'm not sure.
Pegasus was born from the blood that spurted from the neck of the Gorgon. So here is another way to perhaps look at the constellation Andromeda. This is the blood, the Gorgon's blood, of that gave birth to this beautiful creature, which brings us back to, the whole Medusa and Gorgon. And yes, here is the woman who became so ugly that no one would ever violate her again. And in her death, she gave birth to a divine being. So there's sort of this, I am, sort of, I've never seen that association made mythically in any of the myths that I've read in Edith Hamilton or any place else. But it's sort of, I wonder, is there some kind of another connection? Because the constellation Perseus is right there with the head of the Gorgon. And, the Gorgon's blood is giving birth to this winged horse. It's not the first time in Greek mythology that an act of violence gives birth to something magical. Bernadette really likes the idea of Alpheratz being, this sort of flying free. Supposedly, Pegasus then went on to befriend the 9 muses of the arts and, resided amongst them and created a sacred spring by stomping with his divine hoof. The fountain of creativity came from this, winged creature. And this is what we hope for in an election, don't we? People just want to be free. I'm going to have to go back and look at the heliacal star pairs for the 4th of July, and other, significant dates in American history. In the constellation Aries, okay, with its star Hamal, okay, yes, you expect that there's going to be, heads butting. And I'm currently now researching all of the different election days to see what interpretive hay I can make out of if there's anything significant to be found. If election day occurs between November 5th through the 8th, okay, Merak, which is fully in the constellation of Andromeda and is a very female oriented star, and both in 2016 and this year, we have women running for high office. Do we not?
Yes.
Okay. So, Liz, do you have anything you want me to expand on, or, any questions that occurred to you?
Well, I want to thank you for sharing your wonderful knowledge and all the research you've been doing. And I'll put in the comments below about the show that where they can watch the episode on the Venus star point that we did, and then we also
Ah,
did
okay.
an episode previous to this one, which is part one, and then we have episode 3. We'll have a part 3 coming up on the angular stars, so there's a lot for people to look forward to. And you can send questions or comments. You can do that below or personally to either Marcia or myself, because Marcia and I are really good about just sending it to each other also. And again, thank you so much of all the information that you've shared with us. It's very valuable. The fixed stars to me seem like they're a little bit complex, but when you lay the groundwork, it sounds like it's a great addition.
Yeah. I mean, I really would like, yes, in terms of the phases of the stars, I'd like to finish up with, some direct quotes. A direct quote from, the Bernadette Brady book, the
Well, please
fixed.
do.
Yeah. She writes, star phases have not been used in astrology for nearly 2,000 years. Yet this technique was the predominant method used when fixed stars held center stage of an astrologer's life. As we have become disconnected from the sky, their importance faded, not because of faulty technique, but because it was a visually based system. You had to go out and look up. The phasing of a star, that is to say, its rising with the sun on a particular calendar date, its period of visibility in the night sky, and its period of invisibility when it was not present, was one of the major tools for defining the calendar, the seasons, and the weather. In addition, the periods when a star was missing and its subsequent return provided the foundations for both myths and religious practices that the Egyptians raised to their highest form of expression.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's very nice. Here in the Northwest, we often, especially in the fall and winter, have cloudy evenings and even in the spring, so we can't, be out there observing the sky. But now that we have all these apps on our phone and computers, we can know where things are. But it's nicer to see it with our own eyes, I believe.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
thank you. And we'll have part 3 coming up, a date to be determined. And come back and enjoy more episodes of the Astrology Star Sisters Talk Over Tea. And I do other podcasts with Justin Crockett Elsie. We do a full moon forecast each month and a forecast for the month each month. And then we're working on a Chiron asteroid series, and Chiron retrograde part 2 is coming up soon. And then other shows I do with the Astrology Star Sisters, a dwarf planet series, autumn equinox, Libra ingress, the Libra decans, using astrology and tarot, and Marcia and I are continuing with the fixed stars. So we look forward to having you join us. And I will be on Talk Cosmos on September 29th at 1 p.m. And it'll be the Libra new moon. Sorry, I don't have the new advertisement for that because I haven't received it yet. And again, to get a hold of Marcia, it's Madam M at mindspring.com. And my website is alightpath.com. And we always enjoy hearing from you. And thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on future episodes. Goodbye for now. Thank you.